When is the most difficult time in our lives? Let's think about it. When is the most difficult time in our lives? Perhaps it's when we face failure after countless preparation and plans that for us seemed so perfect. When the result turned out far from what we hoped for, it was really difficult for us to take it, right? Like when we get a test score much lower than we expected, even after so many hours and long days of study, and you finally get the score, you thought you were gonna get at least 90 score, but you only get 70 or something. Really frustrating, and it really ruins your heart, right? Or when our carefully made plans are shattered by an event we never saw coming. Sometimes after we plan something so carefully and the things go on as we plan, and suddenly something that we never expected and never thought that it's coming happens and shatters all our plans. And perhaps when we discover that our health is not as strong as we thought, even after doing our best to take care of our own body. That happens, right? In moments like these, we ask ourselves, why? Why did this happen? And sometimes the more we try to fix it with our own strength and plans, it gets worse. I think almost all the time it gets worse. And then, finally, we turn our eyes upward and ask, God, what is happening? Why is everything not going as we planned or expected? What's going on? So today's text speaks to that very question. And the answer God gives is not only to comfort us, but to transform the way we see our lives itself. The biggest mistake we often make when we plan or prepare something in our lives is to think that I know everything I need to know. I'm prepared. I can plan it perfectly. But the truth is, we know so little. Really, we know so little. We don't even know the only thing that we are supposed to know, perfectly. One thing that we should know from top to bottom, which is our own body. We don't even know our own body. Can you count your hairs? Of course you can't. We can only count our fingers and toes, but we cannot count our hairs. Can you look inside your body? No, I can't. We don't know what's going on inside our body. And as human being, collectively, sometimes some people think that we, human being, is the most, smart being on this planet. A being that knows everything. But, the truth is, we still don't fully understand the place we live in, this planet Earth. We don't even know 100% about our own planet. We are not that smart. So how can we claim that we can plan perfectly and expect everything to turn out exactly as we planned? We can't. That's the truth. We only see what's right in front of us. What our eyes can perceive. That's it. Beyond that, we can't. In reality, we, individually, we know almost nothing. Right? We think we know everything because we have smartphones. We Google it, we ask to AI, and we feel like we know everything, but we don't. But God sees everything. He sees whole picture. Because to God, time and space mean nothing. He can see through times, space, everything. For example, when I drive, I use T-Map app, navigation app. I don't go anywhere without my T-Map. Even the places that I know already how to get there, I use T-Map. Sometimes, when I use T-Map, it will guide me on a route that feels strange or longer than the usual route. And I would think, why is it making me go around? It's going to take me more if I go to this route. Then later I find out that there was an accident on the road, my usual road, that caused a huge traffic. So if I took the usual route, it could have taken me like 2 hours or something. But T-Map would, reroute me and save me plenty of time. I only see what's in front of me when I'm driving. I can't know the whole road, but T-Map, it knows the whole route because it has GPS. It can see the road from the space and through the internet connection and all the data it gets from the phones that other people use with the T-Map application. It can actually see how many traffic is on the road that I'm taking. So it can teach me the better ways. In the same way, God sometimes leads us on a different path, a longer, unexpected road that doesn't match our own plan. But it's actually better, safer. We just can't see it yet. Unlike us, God always has the higher way of thinking. Because God is not like us. We only see what's in front of us, but God sees everything. That is why exactly what the Lord tells us in Isaiah chapter 55 verse 8 to 9. And God says, "For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, declares the Lord." And He continues, "As the heavens are higher than the earth, so my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts." So God is telling us, my thoughts is infinitely higher than your thoughts. My ways are infinitely higher than your ways. You think your way is the best one? No, actually it is not. Today we are familiar with multiple, way of thinking, right? Because in this time we live in the times of AI and multiple calculation. And people even talk about multiverse. There are so many choices, so many roads. But practically, we can only see one way because we are not computers. We are limited by our own sensations. But for God, that doesn't matter. God sees every choices that we will make, we made. God sees like, in the movies, there's multiverse spreading like webs. God sees time and space like that. So God can tell us which one is the best way. So, who should we trust more? Our thoughts, our ways, or God's? The Apostle Paul tells us in Romans chapter 8, verse 28. "And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love Him, who have been called according to His purpose." Notice the word all. When Paul says all, Paul doesn't mean only the pleasant things. He also means the like wins and the losses, the joys and the wounds, even our mistakes. So in all things, when Paul says in all things, he's talking about good times, bad times, terrible times, times that we made huge mistakes, includes everything. Everything that happens in our lives, including what looks bad or pointless, can play a part in God's work to bring about good for those who love Him and are called to His purpose. So everything that happens in our lives matters, good or bad. Then why do we see these moments as only bad? Because we cannot see the whole picture. We see a single scene, like in the movie. We are only fixated on the moment. But God sees the whole film. If we were God, watching movie, it would be pointless, right? Because, it is like watching the movie, knowing whole story. But us, we don't see the whole story. So, in the moment to moment, we think that this moment is everything. We tend to judge by what is painful right now, by what hurts today. But God works through the whole story, each and every one of us. I like Joseph. So I talk about Joseph, all the time. Look at Joseph's life. Betrayed by his own brothers, sold as a slave, then falsely accused and thrown into prison. On the surface, this is the typical life of failed men, right? It looks like that his life is ruined because he's not only a slave, but he's in prison right now, right? Looks like ruined life. But God was at work in those painful chapters. It is only chapters. Joseph is only in the painful chapter. That's the point. Through the very trials, Joseph rose to a place where he could save many lives during the famine, right? And the famine struck the land of Egypt and the land around Egypt. He was able to save his own family and so many others. What looked like a disaster became the means of God's deliverance. And Joseph wasn't fixated on that painful chapter of his life. He was able to move on. And also, when Peter denied Jesus for 3 times, when Jesus died on the cross, Peter must have felt that he not only disgraced Jesus, his master, but also he must have felt that he lost the chance to ask forgiveness from his master Jesus, right? But that was not the end, right? We know. That was not the end. Because of this painful experience, he truly understood what love is. After, when Jesus resurrected, Jesus called Peter and asked him 3 times if Peter loves him, right? He was able to understand, not only forgive himself, but understand what true love is. And he truly found his purpose through that painful experience. So he was not a failure. At that moment, he must have felt like he's a failure, but he was not a failure. That was just a part of his story being written. So if your life right now feels like a failure or detour, instead of asking why, remember this: God is not finished editing your story. Your chapter of pain is not the final chapter. It is not. God is still at work, shaping your life toward His good purpose. Now, we need to understand that planning is not bad. You might think that since God is going to do everything for me, why should I plan? No, planning is not bad. Actually, Proverbs chapter 21 verse 5 tells us, the plans of the diligent lead to profit, as surely as haste leads to poverty, which means planning wisely is actually good for us. Of course, we need to plan our lives. We need to plan our lives as well and as wisely as we can. But while we plan and move forward, we must remember and understand a crucial truth. The truth found in today's key verse, today's text that we read. I'd like to read it again. In their hearts, humans plan their course, but the Lord establishes their steps. We may be the ones who plan our courses, but it is God who leads us to the final destination. How we get there and how long it takes is ultimately up to our God. We plan, but to make that plan realized, it is up to God. It is not up to us. Our strength will not make that plan, realized. It is only God who can realize that plan that we made. We need to remember this. That's why when we feel blocked, stopped, despite of our, best plans, our efforts, we tend to ask, why is God stopping me? But actually, we are not. The truth is, sometimes, we are running in the wrong direction. That's the truth. Even with the best and wisest plan that we make, we can sometimes set the course completely off to the destination that we are about to get. Because we are not perfect. We cannot, look forward to all the possible events and elements that might happen during our plan. We can't. So we can go completely off. And God, loving and wise, will sometimes stop us and redirect us to the right path. Like T-Map app. Even when it feels like it is not the right path, but it is actually the better path. For example, when I was in Philippines, I decided to come back to Korea because it was time for me to, start my process of being a minister. So I decided to come back to Korea and enrolled in undergraduate school here. So when I came back to Korea, I made a plan. I made a complete plan. My plan was to finish my undergraduate school here, theology undergraduate school here. Then I go to a graduate school, theology, for 2 years. Before that, of course, I need to go to a military because all Korean men must serve military. So I went there as a Katusa, Korean augmentation to U.S. Army. Then after that, I went to a graduate school. Then my plan was to go to U.S. and start my MDiv, Master of Divinity. Then after the graduation, my plan was to be ordained in U.S. as a U.S. minister and continue my ministry for the rest of my life in U.S. That was my plan. I had a complete plan and how to do it. I researched how to go to, this school, specifically Drew University. Yes, I went to Drew University. And how I might, begin the process in there. I researched everything and it was like a 10 years plan. And I thought I'm going to get that plan realized. But the truth was, the reality was, that plan was stopped right at the beginning. The visa, when you go to, like Miss Ray, when you go to a foreign country and study, you need to get a visa, right? The visa that was issued for me and my wife was a different visa. The typical visa that students get issued when they go to study in U.S. It was the visa that they can extend after their studies. If they decided to study more, they can extend the visa in the U.S., in the country. But the visa that I got could not be extended. It was only for 3 years, that's it. Then I have to come back to Korea. It was odd. Nobody knew. The school didn't know why I got that visa, and the embassy didn't know why I got the visa. Someone in the embassy decided to just give me that visa. And nobody wanted to answer my question, why did I get this visa? So I had to stay for 3 years and come back to Korea. My plan was shattered right at the beginning. I felt frustrated. I felt like God is denying me. Why are you trying to stop my plan right at the beginning? It was really a painful experience. But years later, I realized it was not only the right thing for me, not only the best thing for me, but it was also the best thing for my wife too. Because of this visa, this stumbling block that I thought, it made me to learn and experience much more than I expected. If I stayed in US, I must have not experienced all the things that made me this minister today. God's timing and direction are higher than ours. We need to remember this. We need to understand this. Our God's thoughts is much more higher than our thoughts. God is working all things for good, So when our plans are blocked, let us not be hasty and say, why? But instead, let's trust God's direction. Even when the path looks unclear, let's put our trust in God. In 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 8 to 9, Paul tells us, we are hard-pressed on every side, but not crushed. Perplexed, but not in despair. Persecuted, but not abandoned. Struck down, but not destroyed. Life in faith doesn't promise or guarantee a pain-free journey. No, it doesn't. In fact, it often brings more trials, more failures, and more persecutions. Our nation's history proves it. Christianity, when it came to our nation, they didn't have a good time. They had a hard time. Like early Christians, so many people were killed just because they believed in Jesus Christ. But faith promises something far greater. The strength to stand firm in time of crisis. The strength to stand firm. Everything they can throw to us, we Christians can stay strong. That's the life in faith. A life of true faith does not collapse and ask why. It may slow down, but it keeps moving forward. That's the life of faith. This perseverance is how our nation gained our freedom from violent Japanese occupation 80 years ago. Perseverance. Absolute perseverance. Staying strong. In Philippians chapter 4, verse 6 to 7, Paul tells us, do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition with thanksgiving, present your request to God. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. Paul doesn't say, God will take care of everything. No. Paul says, peace of God will be given to you, which will give us the strength to stay strong in times of persecutions and trials. and problems, in pain. We don't fall down. The fight for freedom during our Japanese occupation was not a straight path. It was a path of many failures, failed plans, repeated setback. So many people lost their lives. It was not an easy one. Didn't happen, right away. It was really difficult path. Some people even thought that we may not be able to gain our freedom while they're fighting for freedom. Yet, the freedom fighters never lost heart or hope because they relied on God. Many of our freedom fighters were Christians, praying and giving thanks even in persecution and even in death. Much like the early Christians, that was our freedom fighters. When we face failures, mistakes, and unexpected outcomes, what we need is not some discouragements saying, why? Or endless whys. Some people say, why is this happening? Why am I here? Why am I doing this? Why he's doing this to me? That's not what we need. What we need are peace and hope, found by placing our lives in God's hands. Better hands, not ours. God's hands. To our Lord who sees everything and understands beyond our mind, who leads us toward good. So, brothers and sisters, when things don't go as planned and we feel blocked, it's because God is guiding us toward a better path. You're not in the wrong path now. You're actually in a better path. Even in failures and mistakes, God uses everything to bring us to a good destination. So today, let us not define our lives by failures or errors. You're not. But let us trust in God's plan. Like the early Christians and our nation's forefathers and mothers, let us walk the path of life with our God, being confident, hopeful, and steadfast. Let us pray.